bit louder, please.
Okay. I'm very happy to be here, particularly on this very sad 10th anniversary. It's wonderful to be among friends, among people who I think care about the things that I care about. So thank you for this invitation and this opportunity. I look at this current historical moment. So I think Professor Wood, he ended on this high note of resistance and marching in the streets, and the other superpower that I was in New York on that day and cried when I saw the headline about the other superpower. But he really, I think, gave us a very strong sense of what we're up against. What I'm going to try to do is convince you that there is a path to a peace economy. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's possible. So as I say, when I look at the historical moment that we're in the effort to see in great challenges opportunities, I see two big things. The first is that we are ending the longest period of war in our history. We are not doing it as fast as we should. We should never have gotten involved in these wars. They've been going on far too long, and we're still in them, but we are in fact winding them down. We are poised to seize a significant defense downsizing, and the question is whether we can actually seize it. So that's one part of the historical moment that I see. The other is the climate crisis. I have a feeling I don't need to convince this crowd of that. We have events that are happening all around us. We have the year of record heat, which was last year. We have extreme weather events, Hurricane Sandy and on. We have a drought last summer that covered 3/5 of the country and decimated crops and raised food prices, and on and on. So we have current conditions convincing us that we have a climate crisis. And then we have the science, which projects a future if we don't reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. That is truly frightening. So how do we connect these things, and how do we turn them into an opportunity? I'd like to just detour a moment to tell you a little bit about my history. It's a little odd. It sort of tells you the lesson that people's true paths take a lot of twists and turns. So I got a PhD in, wait for it, English literature. I pretty much knew by the end of it that I didn't actually want to be an English professor. But as you all know in this room, it takes a long time to get one of those degrees, and so I figured this was my destiny. So I was starting an academic job search. But along the way, I decided to take a temporary editing job, to make some money while I was doing this protracted job search. So I took a job with an organization called the National Commission for Economic Conversion and Disarmament. I didn't know what economic conversion was, but I thought, it sounded vaguely progressive, so why not for a few months? It turned out that economic conversion was, as you know, converting swords into plowshares, converting military resources to civilian use, and as it happened, I took this job a month before the fall of the Berlin Wall. So suddenly, converting military resources to civilian use became this huge issue. We were going to bring down the military budget, we were going to fund education and healthcare and the environment and everything I cared about. And I got completely hooked by the issue, and there went my academic career. I never looked back. So we said back then, I would differ with Professor Wood a little bit. I think we did get a peace dividend. We got about 1/3 of the budget coming down, but he's absolutely right that pretty soon thereafter it started climbing back up again. So what we said was the key to sort of making this peace dividend permanent was a new national mission to take the place of winning the Cold War. So what actually happened, which is one of the reasons that we weren't able to preserve this peace dividend, was it basically got, and as is happening now, dissipated into deficit reduction, into all manner of parts of the private economy. But you know, if you're going to get these defense contractors to do something else, it's got to be big, because that's what they do. They do big, complicated, sustained projects. And so we said that this new national mission that was big enough was to create an environmentally sustainable economy. So we were going to be employing, you know, all of the resources, all of the engineering talent, all of, you know, we were going to get those contractors to move into these new areas of creating a clean energy and transportation economy. So I think this crowd would agree with me that that was a good one. And it was true then that we needed to create that kind of economy, and it's even truer now. So the question is how do we do that? I want to start first with sort of a few. Can you hear me still? A few illustrations of where we are now. This is where we've come. So this is the trajectory of defense spending since the end of World War II. And you can see all of these spikes. You see Korea, then you see Vietnam, then you see the Cold War, and then you see the post 9/11 wars. And this red area, the Bush administration decided to separate war spending from defense spending. So always before they were combined, the Bush administration decided that you know, there's this budget that is for defense, you know, ongoing forever, and then we're going to put war spending on top of it. And so having these separate budgets, in a way, disguised how big this budget really became, although this illustration is pretty clear about how big it became. This is, by the way, adjusted for inflation. Okay, so this is the same period. What this is emphasizing, as is probably clear, is the periods of downsizing. You can ignore the black line there and just look at those individual bars for individual years, and you see that the post-Korea downsizing was the largest, and then came the post-Vietnam downsizing, a little more shallow, then the post-Cold War downsizing, which was about a third. Then we get to the purple area, and that is the spending reductions mandated by the Budget Control Act plus the sequester. And as you see, the sequester, which is, you know, talked about as if, well, the until recently Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta called it doomsday for our national security. But you can see that it is a shallower downsizing than any of the previous downsizings. So on sequestration, I think we can all agree it's a bad way to run a government, to just cut everything off equally. It's going to cause great hardship. The cuts on the domestic side are going to be really bad. I mean, what sense does it make to be cutting you know, medical research, food safety? We all know the litany of programs that are going to cause great harm, great hardship. However, I would say that the amount of cuts, as distinct from cutting everything equally from the defense budget, that's probably a bad way to cut the defense budget. but the amount that is prescribed by sequestration only brings us back to the level of spending where we were in the year 2007. So I put the question to you, were we feeling disarmed in the year 2007? I don't think so. Okay, so this is a bit of a review. It's a bit of a different way of showing you something that Professor Woods already showed you. Anyway, this is where we are with respect to the rest of the world. So, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back for a second. You'll notice that sequestration brings us back to nearly the level we were at the height of the Cold War, when we had a peer adversary, a country that was spending about the amount on its military to defeat us as we were spending to defeat them. So, you know, will this be news to you? We have no peer adversary anymore. The Cold War is over, and yet sequestration, doomsday, is going to bring us back only slightly below where we were at the height of the Cold War. And so here's where we are. There's the U.S. on the right, and spending slightly more than the next 13 countries put together. This is a slightly different way of looking at it. We're going to connect the U.S. Budget to all of our NATO allies, to our other allies. And we're going to put that up against current and potential foes and other nations who are neither, you know, allies nor foes. They're out there. They're doing their own thing. They're not threatening us in any way. But just the U.S. and its allies comprises about 70% of global military spending. Do you think we might be able to do a little downsizing? Okay, so this is a pie rendition of the discretionary budget that Professor Wood showed you. We can see the size of the military pie as opposed to everything else. I point out the sort of the light blue pie, which is the international affairs budget. That's all the spending on our engagement with the world by non-military means. So nuclear non-proliferation, peacekeeping troops, diplomacy, foreign aid, all of that goes into that narrow little slice. And then the other slice, the big darker blue slice, is the other way we engage with the world, that is through military force. If we're looking at climate change spending, the most important slices are energy and the environment, very small, about 3%. Transportation, even smaller, about 2%. So looking just at a couple of those in a slightly different way, this on the left is the weapons procurement budget, and then way over on the right is the Department of Energy's energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. We used to have, the federal government used to be required to produce a climate change budget. But a couple of years ago, Congress decided in its wisdom that, you know, since climate change doesn't exist, why should we really care about how much we spend on it? So they said, oh, no, you don't have to do that. So I try to do that every year. It's a bit rough and ready, but you know, there are some other programs in addition to this energy efficiency and renewable bill, obviously dwarfed by what is spent on the military. So the defense industry, as Professor Wood so ably demonstrated and discussed, does not want, you know, these budget priorities to change.
Wow.
So this is the webpage of the Aerospace Industries Association. It's the largest lobbying force of the defense industry. It launched this year a multi-million-dollar campaign of lobbying, of funding studies to make, I will tell you, very inflated claims about the numbers of jobs that would be lost from sequestration. Okay, so I won't go through the arguments for why these claims are inflated, but I will say that the Pentagon has about $100 billion in backlogged orders that are just waiting to give to somebody, and the contractors themselves have been sitting on a lot of cash. So they've begun to lay people off, but the layoffs are really quite disconnected from their CEO compensation and from their profits and their revenues. So now we get to do this. Okay. Now we get to the place where we were sitting. The state of Virginia is the most defense-dependent state in the Union. Contracts in 2011 amounted to $36 billion. That was more than any other state. But in addition, that's roughly the same as what California gets or what Texas gets. However, those states have a much more diversified economy than does the state of Virginia. So Virginia really needs to diversify its economy. Whatever you think about the military, it's not a good thing to be a victim of these sorts of ups and downs in the military budget, to have all of your eggs in one basket. So one way of pushing back against the argument that we can't cut the defense budget because we will increase unemployment. It is true that $36 billion buys you a lot of jobs, but it turns out that the military is about the poorest job creator that there is. There are a few reasons for that I can go into if you want, but here was a study of $1 billion put into different sectors of the economy. So as you see, military spending generated for that $1 billion the fewest number of jobs of any of the sectors that were measured. Even cutting taxes did a better job of creating jobs than did military spending. Clean energy was better than that, then comes healthcare, and then comes education. So that gets you to a certain point to be able to say, if we took the money from here and we put it over there, we would create more jobs. But if you've got one of those military jobs, you're not likely to say, oh well, I'm happy to give this job up in order to take one that I might get if we invest differently over there. This is a sort of a picture of what we're up against. This is a program that you plug in, and this is where the C-17 military transport plane is made. I don't know for sure, but I would bet you money that one of those little flags in California is in the district of Buck McKeon, who is the chair of the House Armed Services Committee, and has probably more power over the defense budget than anybody else in Congress. His wife ran for the state legislature, and the defense industry gave her money. So this is what I call, the political protection racket that has us spending money on weapon systems we don't need. The defense industry has gotten really good, better than during the post-Cold War period. They've really gotten smart about putting contracts, spreading them out in all 50 states, and particularly concentrating them in the congressional districts of the key committee chairs in Congress. So this is what we're up against. What do we do about it? All right, so back to our pie. The biggest key to changing this situation and getting the kind of defense downsizing that our country needs so that we can invest in things like clean energy and clean transportation to reduce greenhouse gases and save the planet for our children and our grandchildren. So the biggest key is we just need to change, we need to do a fiscal shift. We need to change the size of these pie pieces. So sequestration just shrinks the pie, that's all it does. We need to instead, enlarge the pieces that are, most, my priority, most relevant for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So as I say, the transportation pie and the energy and environment pie. And if we do that, I maintain that the companies, the defense contractors will go after that money. They will follow the money. They will figure out ways to get a hold of it and to start building windmills if that's where the money is. So we need this fiscal shift, and I imagine that you've heard about the budget that is out there that does this. This is the Congressional Progressive Caucus Back to Work budget. It is, it focuses on investment and the kinds of things I've been talking about. It makes the tax code fairer. It institutes something that's close to my heart and the heart of my organization, a financial transactions tax. Tiny little tax on every transaction to kind of slow down the global casino. And our proposal is that we use some of that money to fund a clean energy transition in the developing world. It also does the sequester, but it really focuses on weapon systems we don't need. What's happening now is that the civilian DoD workforce is being decimated, and so and the contractors are being protected largely. It institutes a public option for healthcare costs, and of course it invests in the environment. So, as many of you may know, tomorrow Congress will vote on the Paul Ryan budget and the Back to Work budget. I will spare you the suspense. Neither one of these budgets is actually going to pass, but the Back to Work budget. So I worked on this budget for the CPC in past years. I didn't work on this one, but this one is the best yet in my view. So here's a little pitch. It's going to be voted on tomorrow. If you do anything tomorrow morning, please pick up the phone, call your congressperson, tell them that you want them to vote for the CPC Back to Work budget. All right, so in addition to a fiscal shift, I argue that the way to get a peace economy is to fund transition assistance for defense workers and defense-dependent communities and small and medium-sized defense businesses to help them make the transition into new markets. I argue that money is well spent because you will enable them to make that transition, and then you will reduce the pressure to keep defense spending high to support those communities and those workers. So I put together a framework for this defense transition assistance, and I'm shopping it on the Hill, and there's a lot of interest. You know, we'll see how far this goes, but it has several component parts. One is there's a couple of programs. One is in the Commerce Department, the other's in the Defense Department, offering community planning grants. So the community gets together, it puts together its stakeholders, and it figures out where are the financial incentives, getting economic development folks together, and coming up with a plan to grow new business and a new economic base. Technical assistance. The Commerce Department has a network of manufacturing extension centers that assist businesses in making this kind of transition. Then obviously job retraining funds, technology transfer. There was a great program, it was a good program that the Clinton administration instituted. It was called the Technology Reinvestment Project. And it one of the things it did was connecting defense contractors and commercial contractors, because defense contractors, are likely to sort of say, sure, I can build windmills, and they build them the way they build submarines, and then you wind up with cost overruns and tolerances in the well, the welds that will be done to national security standards and make costs go through the roof. So these partnerships were very creative in helping companies learn how to produce for the commercial market. So I'm running out of time here. A couple of examples to show you this can be done. Lockheed Martin, the biggest defense giant of them all, developed out of its military aviation this product called Hybridrive, which was a hydraulic system that was a hybrid system, gas and electric, and it figured out how to put them in buses. Then in 2002, and it got one of these technology investment grants to do it. In its wisdom, in 2002, I guess it decided that war was where it was at, and so it sold this product to another defense contractor. Fast forwarding, there are now 4,000 of these buses transporting nearly 2 million passengers a day. They're on the streets of New York City, San Francisco, Houston, Seattle, and Chicago, as well as London, Japan, and Canada. So I would say Lockheed Martin is that. The other one that's more relevant to the defense industrial base of Virginia, which is focused mainly on shipbuilding, military shipbuilding, as you know. Another major shipbuilder is Bath Iron Works. It's the largest employer in Bath in Maine, and it's getting into building an offshore wind farm off the coast of Maine. So this can be done. It's not easy, but it can be done. In addition to this fiscal shift, we've got to change the pies. We have to provide defense transition assistance for communities. And closest to my heart, back to this map, this is a pitch of mine for local communities to do local projects to demonstrate that there is life after defense contracting. So I mentioned these community transition planning grants. I'm working with a community in Lynn, Massachusetts right now. It is where GE does most of its military aviation. And the workers who represent the GE workers, the union, is about to apply for one of these planning grants and to figure out a new strategy for job development in Lynn, Massachusetts. So I'd love it if there were some people in this room who would be interested in doing this very different kind of labor-intensive, time-intensive kind of organizing to demonstrate somewhere in Virginia that there is life after defense contracting. So finally, a few suggestions for action and advocacy that you may not already know. One is, we've talked about, the back to work budget. Another is a package of federal defense transition assistance. If you find that your congressman is interested in this, I'd love to talk to him or her. Then there are a couple of states. One of them, oddly, is state of Florida, Republican governor, that is has put about $1 million into providing assistance for state businesses and communities that are dependent on defense to help them transition out of it. So I was talking to a staffer on the Hill who said she thought that Governor McDonnell had done something like this. I couldn't find it. If you can find it, let me know, or tell him that he needs to do this. And then finally are these local models. So I would say, in conclusion, that translating these two enormous challenges into opportunities won't be easy. I think you probably gotten that lesson rather clear. But I would argue, for the sake of our children and our grandchildren, we can't afford to fail.